In this video, we continue our conversation with Gene Billingsley of GMT in discussing the games that helped to build the company it is today. Here, we will focus on the games released between 2019 and 2021 on Legendary Tactics.
All right, 2019. Let's talk about 2019. A few things happened in 2019, and not all of them were like big impact with sales, but I still want to mention them. Okay, so the first thing is we got another Commands and Colors game out the door. Commands and Colors Medieval. So this started our third Commands and Colors line. And now we've got another game or another expansion that we did for that. And that'll continue, as long as Richard wants to do them. So now we've got an Ancients, a Napoleonics, and a Medieval line. And you probably know we've also got the Samurai game. So trying to not be one-stop shop, but just have lots of different Commands and Colors games for people who like that particular series. So that came out in 2019. There's a really backstabby take that Euro game that we did that year. I don't want to say it's a Euro game. It's an area control game dipped in so much history, but it's got to take that feels like Euros, called Ancient Civs of the Inner Sea. And Mark McLaughlin and Christopher Borderbrew brought us that. It's a ancient themed multiplayer strategy series of games. And the reason it's important is A, people like it. And crazy fun stuff happens to you, terrible random events. Richard Berg would have loved the random events in this game. Random disasters happen. You can make a disaster happen to your opponent sometimes. You never feel like you've won that game until the end. So that was important, and it started a whole line of those games. We have Ancient Civs of the Middle East, and we're getting ready to announce another Ancient Civs game in a couple of months. And I think eventually there'll be 4 of those, as long as people continue to like them and play them. I saw the third one at Tempe this year at Console World Expo, and I think it's the best of the bunch so far. Really, really cool. I can't wait to play it in finished form. So having, Mark McLaughlin had done other games for us. He, by the way, was the designer of Napoleonic Wars, of Wellington, that whole series. And you're probably going to see new versions of both Napoleonic Wars and Wellington from us. So, and just Mark's a great guy. And look at Rachel and Luke's GMT talk with him if you want to get a sense of who he is and what he likes. Definitely one of the old-time designers who still loves games and still throws himself, all his passion and his heart into creating them. So really happy to have a whole Ancient Civ series. In 2019, we did a game called Death Valley, which is a GBACW game. And the reason I want to mention it here is because, 2019 was the year that Richard Berg passed. In the years before that, I don't exactly remember which one it was. It was 2016 or 17 or 18. A gentleman named Dick Whitaker, who's a good designer in his own right. He did the Shiloh game and the Into the Woods for us. He bought the rights to GBACW from Richard and proceeded to build a team of passionate American Civil War designers, developers, testers, players, artists. And so now we've got this new blood, if you will, people that are they've reinvigorated the series. I mean, for Richard, it had been something he'd done for a long time. And then, toward the end with Richard, he really couldn't work the last couple of years. And so, there's always the question, well, what's going to happen to this? And that question usually comes from the players, not from us. It's like, hey, I love these games. How are we going to continue them without Richard? Well, the answer in this case was Dick Whitaker and his team. Greg Lawback was the designer of Death Valley. So this game was the changing of the guard. for GBACW. It brought Greg Lawback and Dick's emerging team and showed us what they could do. And it won a CSR award that year for best pre-World War II war game. It's that good. I think it's out of print right now, although probably we're going to see something else with it, with either a reprint or something that's newly done that includes that battle. Because Greg is continuing to design, Dick is designing. We have several other new designers in that group. So that brought us a whole bunch of designers who are focused on this one series. And there again, it may not be the best seller for GMT, but it's going to make a lot of players happy. So it's continuing to build GMT. The next game for 2019 that I have to mention is Gandhi. So Bruce Mansfield is an amazing guy. I love him. He's a friend now. He's a teacher. He's a master educator, master teacher. So he teaches other teachers. Really smart, really thinks about solo play. And so a lot of things happened with Gandhi. I mean, first, it's the first coin game that actually had non-violence. I mean, there's two, I think I'm right. There's two factions in that game that are non-violent. How does that work in a war game? Well, Bruce showed us how it worked. It also has the Arjuna bot, which is the first time that GMT had done or had brought to players the coin card-based system for 1 to 3 players. And so Bruce later became one of our developers as well. And he and Jason Carr, so Bruce and Jason and Joe Dewhurst, another one of our developers, they're kind of the key guys inside GMT1 right now, which GMT1 is like our little in-house solo design company. And sometimes there's other people that do solo games, like I did Mr. President. You know, we have Joel Toppin did Comancheria and Navajo Wars. But the things that come out of GMT1 generally come from Jason, Joe, or Bruce. And sometimes it's a game, sometimes it's a solo system where a designer didn't know what to do for a solo system, but they knew they needed one. So bringing Bruce to our team was a huge deal. And, you know, I mentioned Jason Carr a couple times in passing. I should say that about 2018 was when Jason kind of started getting involved in GMT. And he now is our director of development. He's also helps Kai with art assignment and all that, but and he really runs GMT1. He's a really smart guy, has a lot of experience in his real day job of managing people and projects. And so as we talked about it, we said, you know, we've outgrown our ability to develop all the games. We have some teams like the one I just talked about, GBACW, they've got developers built in. They don't really need Jason. Uh, you know, take that for what it's worth. We all need Jason. But if you have a team with developers embedded, they don't tend to have to utilize all the development resources. Jerry White has a team built in. Mark Simonich has a team built in. Now, those guys still might go to Jason once in a while and say, I need some particular help. But what he's done with everybody else that isn't embedded, with he's probably got 60% of our design teams right now that he has built a team of developers, some of whom are GMT staff developers that we pay, that work for us full time, you know, or half time in some of their cases, which was something GMT never did before Jason came along. And so he's built a team of developers that give us the capability to make sure that games are polished. And we have enough games that my view has always been, I don't care when it's done. Now, I know players don't want to hear that. They want it done like tomorrow. But I just care that it's right. And so if you don't have people who can make it right, then caring that it's right, it's a wish. You know, it's not something you can really do. So what Jason has done, and Bruce and Joe Dewhurst and the various people who are of, Marco Putre. I can't even forget him because second edition Mr. President happened basically because of Marco and Jason and Kai. They got that done. That has given us a capacity to continue to take on these new young designers I was talking about last time. We've got all these designers that stick around and we love it, but we don't want to say no to the new designers either, because these guys have great ideas. Stephen Ragazos doing the British way. I mean, I met him in DC this last March when you were there,
Yep.
and super impressed. This guy does his research. He has design skills. He listens. He, again, one of those smartest guy in the room kind of guys, but very humble and just devoted to his craft. Jason, without Jason Carr, without the development side, we would never have been able to say yes to guys like Steven, who Jason found, and NB doing Cross Bronx Expressway and Combat Commander Vietnam. So bringing Jason on board, we kind of did that gradually over time. That was a huge deal for us. And it's not in one of these, he didn't design one of these games I'm talking about right now, but in this timeline, in that 2018 to 2020 timeframe, Jason really started getting involved. And the first time we really saw that, because there's a lead time to these games, was with Gandhi, because he and Bruce had worked through that, and they paid such attention to detail. And I still remember them being so upset when, after the game was already out, they found a couple pieces of errata, and they were just crushed. They came in my office at one of the weekends at the warehouse, and they just were inconsolable. And I was like, guys, we'll fix it. But I'm just saying that, I'm not saying I was right and they were wrong there. I'm saying that they're so dedicated to their craft that when they saw a couple of pieces of errata, they thought they'd failed. And I'm like, no, you have not failed. This game is, I mean, how much joy has Gandhi brought to people, right? And I said, hey, it's the worst game we're ever going to do together. We're going to learn and iterate, and the next one will be better. I'm still on 2019. You probably got the sense that 2019 was kind of a big year for us. And it was also the year that Richard Berg and Chad Jensen both passed.
Mm.
So it was kind of bittersweet. In 2019, Voco created his second big new series for GMT with Nevsky and the Levy and Campaign series. It won a CSR award that year. We sold out. Not as broad interest in our gamers, because it has so much focus on supply and logistics, which makes it really realistic. And I love that. But the people that just want to move and fight, it's not so much their thing. But even there, Voco, in typical Voco fashion, he builds a team of young designers who are passionate about different parts of history, and he works with them. And now they've got, what, 5 or 6 games out there in that series. So, I talked about Voco a lot last time, but man, what he means a lot to GMT. And he's got this new series that he's got Coast Watchers and Draken are the two, and I'm sure there'll be more in the intelligence series. And he just told me the other day that he wants to show me something new that he made just for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in. I don't care what it is. If he knows me really well, and if he made something for me, I want to play it. So I'll know what that is in a little while. Yeah, it's really cool because he has all the background, professionally to do all this. And yet, watching him from the inside, I see how much he learns and grows each time, because he's a lifetime learner. He just always wants to learn more and get better. And he's one of these guys, he can model something. There used to be an argument a long time ago, simulation versus playability in the hobby. Like, you had to have one or the other. Volko knows how to simulate because he's done these things in the real world, but he also thinks playability is super important. And so that's a good mix from my point of view. But at this point, after all the paths we've walked together, me and Voco, I don't care what he does next. If he's passionate about it, we're going to produce it. I'm a few weeks, maybe a couple of months from knowing exactly what this is, but then I get to see it and play it, so I'm good with that. One more thing in 2019, um, a new designer who's older than me. I'm quick to say that. I'm just poking fun at him. A guy named Mike Denson from East Texas came to me and said, I've created a World War II tactical game system. And I'm thinking, well, we've got Combat Commander. But Mike is so passionate about what he's done. He's one of these guys that the passion comes through as he talks to you, and pretty soon you're like, yeah, I'm in. And so he created this series called The Last 100 Yards. And it does bring some really new things to tactical combat. I think it's super interesting. Uh, and now he built kind of an internal team, and so they've got I think 4 or 5 new additions to that full box products out now. We've got one in the Pacific and Russian front and British airborne guys. So 2019 was the start of that. And any of you designers out there who or it's late in life and you think, nah, I could have done that when I was 20 or 30, but not now. Go talk to Mike Denson. He's still going strong. And he didn't start till he was, I'm not going to say how old he is, but older than me. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that one's a fairly complex one, though, isn't it? The last 100 yards? Like,
I think all tactical games tend to lean complex.
hmm.
So I don't think necessarily more so than another tactical game. I just I can't think of a tactical World War II game I've ever played that didn't seem complex at some level. I've I've always wanted to play Jim Crone's World War II. He's got a set of tactical games that he did for somebody else.
Band of Brothers?
Yeah, Band of Brothers, that's it. But I've always wanted it's I haven't ever played it, and I like Jim. He's a good designer. I thought I'm gonna have to try that one of these days. So anyway, I think I find most of them to be kind of complex. But like anything else, once you've played them, a lot of things are just kind of second nature. Like, how did they do that? And then you've learned it. You don't have to read the whole thing. We're going to move on to 2020. And you put a graphic up about this one last time. We talked about it real briefly, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. 2020 is when Ananda and Jason did Imperial Struggle. And it's a little different way of looking at struggle than Twilight Struggle, but it's super cool. I just think I think it's super creative. So it won a couple of CSR awards. It won a Golden Geek Award. I mean, this is the real deal. And it's sold, I don't know. I think it's 10th or 11th on our list of all-time bestsellers, and it's been around for 5 years. So that tells you something. Anyway, super happy that they brought us that game in 2020. 2021, I will talk about 2 games. The first one is Dominant Species Marine because it's the last game that Chad designed. Now we're trying to work with Kai and get some of Chad's designs that were halfway done or whatever, you know, out there in the world. And thanks to John Butterfield, we did that with Downfall. But 2021, Dominant Species Marine, I remember in 2019, 6 months before he passed, 7 months before he passed, Chad was showing me Dominant Species Marine at our weekend at the warehouse in April. And he said, Gene, I took the 3 things I didn't like about Dominant Species and I made them better. And it's funny because I thought the players would agree with him. It seems to be about half and half. Some people are like, no, if you're a purist, you play the original Dominant Species. And people will go, yeah, but mechanically, this one's better. And I tend to fall in that camp. I actually think Dominant Species Marine is better. Um, but that's the last one we got from Chad. It's been a great seller for us as well. Not as well as Dominant Species because Dominant Species had, 10 more years to sell. But it's a game we're going to sell for a long time. And I'm at the point as a player now, finally, I think enough time has passed that I can sit down and play one of Chad's games and not get like depressed that, Chad's not there playing it with us. Now, I still think of him, and so I'm playing Marine and I'm thinking, of words he said and things he said and ways he harassed us, because Chad was notorious about, you had to earn your victory if you played against Chad. He wasn't one of these, he wouldn't bring a game to me and say, Gene, I'm gonna let you win when we play so you'll like my game so you'll publish it. No, he's gonna pummel me if he could, because I had to earn the victory. But so I hear those things in my head when I'm playing these games, even still. But that's a better headspace to be in with his games, just to think of them and smile, you know? Anyway, that's the first game, Dominant Species Marine for 2021. And we reprinted, I mean, we sold out. We printed a whole bunch of them and we sold out. That was one of our quickest sellouts ever with a huge print run. And we printed again in 2022 and still selling well. But I will say, no matter how well it did for us in 2021, it was outshined, not in set, well, maybe in sales too, um, by a game that nobody saw coming. The first time I saw this game was at a weekend at the warehouse, and I told Jerry White, the designer, that it was weird. And I could tell, he looked at me and he looked crushed. And I'm like, okay, I have to revise my comments here. It was just so different. And here's another place where one of our designers was super innovative. Atlantic Chase. There is nothing like it in the game space anywhere. There's nothing like it in the war game space. There's nothing like it in the broader game space. When I saw these lines of little wooden ships all over the map of the North Atlantic, I'm like, what the heck, Jerry? What is this? And he goes, well, just imagine you're in the basement of the Admiralty. And, we've all seen the pictures in the movies where they're like using these long sticks to push wooden ships around to different locations. He says, this is where they think their ships are, but they're getting all these different reports. He said, I built a system where both sides think they know where the other side are, and you can get closer and closer and closer, and eventually you find them and you fight. And I was like, dang, I just I never saw that coming. It's so different to what any war game I'd ever played. And of course I ended up thinking it was really cool. And thankfully the hobby agreed with me. It's the only game we've ever done that won 5 Charles Roberts Awards in the same year, including Game of the Year. So Jerry saw something that I wrote about Pacific Chase, which is now on our P500 list. We just put it there. And to tell you something about how popular it is, the system is Pacific Chase. It's been on the P500 list for 2 weeks and it's got over 1,000 orders.
Oh, wow.
That just doesn't really happen with our games very often. And so Atlantic Chase was something new. And it put Jerry on the map with Hex and Counter Gamers. I mean, he had done Skies Above the Reich, Skies Above Britain, Storm Above the Reich, and a couple of solitaire games from World War II, but none of those were Hex and Counter games. Although I got to give him credit for making the bombers in the Sky series the map. I mean, that was innovative. Nobody had ever done that before either that I knew of. So he he's just a super creative, super humble guy. And when I promoted Pacific Chase, I talked about the fact that this game won 5 awards and it's from Jerry. And here's how it's even better this time because Jerry crafted it so the whole thing's solitaire playable this time. All Pacific Chase. You can play with others, you can play the whole thing solitaire. Also, learning and iterating, right? And he writes me and says, you embarrassed me. You said too many nice things. And I'm like, I tell you what, Jerry. He goes, I don't deserve all that. And I said, I'll tell you what, you show me another GMT game that won 5 CSR awards in the same year, and I'll publicly take it all back. I said, but there aren't any. That's the only one. So that was a big deal for us in 2021, and it sold out a couple times, which that's really good. I don't think it's made our top 15 yet, but it's only been in print for 4 years, so it's hard to make, it's hard to get in even the top 30 with only a few years of sales. So now we're going to have a second one, and that's super exciting to me. It didn't bring us Jerry White, but it just continued his innovation, and it brought us a game that the wargaming hobby's never seen the like of it. So that makes me proud and thankful.